Welcome back. You're watching Australian Agenda, where we're running 90-minute specials during the course of the election campaign, and our guest now live out of Canberra is the coalition spokesperson for the campaign, as well as the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Senator Matthias Cormann. Senator, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
I'll ask you one of Penny Wong's questions to start, if I can. It's actually a pretty good one, isn't it? This question of how do you deal going forward in your budget estimates with the fact that the floating carbon price, not that it's there yet, is slated year on year out in the forward estimates to go up pretty dramatically, bringing in many, many billions of dollars. How does the coalition cover those lost billions going forward, not just in the next year, but over the entire forward estimates if you're going to cut out the carbon price altogether?
Well, I mean, obviously, in good time before the election, we will be releasing a full list of all of our policies and their cost and all of the related savings. And what it will show is that the budget bottom line will be better off as a result of our package of policies and savings measures than what it would be under Labor. Now, in relation to the carbon tax, what of course you're pointing out here is the dishonesty of Kevin Rudd's announcement a few weeks ago, when he tried to make people believe that he had scrapped the carbon tax, when all he had done was to rebrand it and essentially, in the best case scenario, have some offset in 1 year, but of course it will continue to go up and up and up. Now, what we've said for some time is we will scrap the carbon tax because that will help create jobs, it will help reduce cost of living pressures on families, and of course it will help to grow the economy more strongly. And in terms of the specifics of our savings measures, of course, we've already announced about $17 billion worth of savings, and between now and the election there'll be more to come.
Can I ask you for your reaction to John Howard's comments during the week, what he thought of direct action as a policy? He was asked whether he would support that policy himself where he's still in politics, and his answer to that was that he supports the coalition policy. He didn't answer the question directly. That's about as close as John Howard's ever going to get to rejecting the policy, isn't it?
Well, he said he supports the coalition policy. I'm not quite sure what your question is there, Peter.
The question that he was asked whether he himself would support the policy or introduce that policy were he still in government, and he didn't answer that question. And from what you're saying,
he supported it. Well, he did. He supported coalition policy. I mean, I think that that's pretty clear.
All right. Can I ask you more generally, though, do you accept that by pricing carbon via direct action, that is still a form of pricing carbon? It's still billions of dollars going into a formula which involves pricing carbon, isn't it?
I don't accept that at all. What we're doing, contrary to what the Labor Party is doing, is providing incentives for business to reduce their emissions. I mean, instead of whacking people with a great big new tax, which pushes up the cost of electricity, which pushes up the cost of living, and which pushes up the cost of doing business and makes us less competitive internationally, what we're doing is through a capped, fully funded program, provide incentives on to achieve the best possible reductions in emissions that are available across the economy.
Can I just ask, Senator, in relation to the coalition's costings, will you provide the costings and saves across the entire forward estimates period, and will we have to wait till the final week of the election to see this comprehensive document?
Well, I mean, firstly, yes, we will be providing a full and detailed cost of both the spending measures and the savings measures, and what it will show is a positive impact on Labor's budget bottom line, and of course, all of the rhetoric that's been coming from the Labor Party in recent weeks in relation to this has been quite dishonest.
Yeah, and can I ask, when are we likely to see this document? Will we have to wait till the last week?
Well, I mean, obviously on Tuesday, the Secretaries of Treasury and Finance will be releasing the pre-election economic and fiscal outlook. I mean, we will be considering that document, of course. We've been going through a methodical, professional, disciplined process and a clear timetable for some time. And of course, at some point between the release of the pre-election economic and fiscal outlook and the election, in good time before the election, we will be releasing all of the detail, and people will have ample time to form their judgments.
What do you feel about the likely credibility of this document we get next week?
Well, look, obviously we're concerned about Labor's track record. I mean, over the 6 years since Labor has been in government, I mean, they've essentially delivered or projected $250 billion worth of accumulated deficits. That is many billions of dollars worse than what they promised would happen before the last election. So if you look at the historical record, I mean, Labor in the lead up to the last election, the same as they did this time, released a pre-election economic statement, and where the budget the year before showed a $44 billion deficit, for example, for 2011-12, all of a sudden in the pre-election period and in the pre-election economic statement, that went down to a $10 billion deficit. But guess what? When the final budget outcome came out, we were back at a $43.4 billion deficit. And of course, for the subsequent years, we were promised a $3.1 billion surplus for 2012-13. We're now looking at a $19.4 billion deficit.
Okay, so what's the conclusion from this?
Well, the conclusion is that the budget position has been deteriorating rapidly under Labor because Labor has got a massive spending problem.
But will you accept the validity of the numbers next week? These numbers, as you know, come from the departments.
Well, I mean, we accept that the numbers that will come out next week are Treasury's and Finance's best estimate. But at the end of the day, like, we will be releasing a full list of our costings, a full list of our spending measures, a full list of our savings measures. It will show a positive impact on Labor's budget bottom line, but we can only vouch for our numbers. We can't vouch for Labor's numbers. And if you look at what's happened just since the budget in May, in the 11-week period from May to when, of course, the government released the economic statement, the budget position deteriorated by $3 billion a week.
Isn't the point, though, that the figures that we're going to see in PFO come out in the next couple of days are purely Treasury figures? Now, if the coalition doesn't trust those figures, then heads are going to have to roll at Treasury when you're in government, surely.
Well, no, that's not right. I mean, Treasury, of course, is serving the government of the day, and we just look at the historical record. And we look, I mean, obviously we hope that the pre-election economic and fiscal outlook this time round is going to be more accurate than what it was in the lead up to the last election. We'll see what it is when it comes out. And of course, but ultimately, I mean, the thing that matters, we've got to provide a full costing of the policies that we're taking to this election, and we've got to show how we're paying for those policies. And of course, when it is all said and done, when you've put all of our policies and the cost of those policies next to all of our savings measures and how much we plan to save through those measures, then what you will see is that the budget bottom line, whatever it is when we get into government, should we get into government, that it will be better off than what it would be under Labor.
Okay, now just on this point about the budget bottom line, will you commit to return to surplus by a particular year?
Well, it depends on the starting position. I mean, you've seen that the budget position has deteriorated by $3 billion a week.
It's a very simple question. Will you commit to return to surplus? In other words, will you project a return to surplus by a particular year or not?
Well, and I mean, my answer is very clear. It depends on, I mean, obviously we need to know what the starting position is for that. We don't know what the starting position is.
Well, you'll see the starting position next week. You'll see the starting position when we get the material from the departments.
And we'll be able to make those judgments at that point in time.
So we will find out at that point in time. So when that information is released next week, we will get a projection, but understandably you'll just wait till then to see it.
Let me make it very clear again. What you will get from the coalition is a full list of all of our policies and their costs.
I understand that, but we're not asking that question.
You will get a full list of all of our savings measures, and you will see what the net fiscal impact is. You will see what the net impact of our spending and our saving is on the budget bottom line. And then, of course, people will be able to form their own judgments. But I repeat again, we can only vouch for our numbers. We can't vouch for Labor's numbers. I mean, the budget bottom line under Labor has been massively deteriorating. And so, I mean, who knows what the position is going to be in another 11 weeks, given what's happened over the past 11 weeks.
So can I ask, when we see PFO, do you consider that Labor's numbers, or will that be for the first time Treasury's numbers independent of government?
Well, as I've said before, we accept that P4 will be Treasury's and Finance best estimate of where the position is at. But what we also know is that the reason the government released a pre-election economic statement 2 days before calling the election, as they did last time, is because that is their political attempt to lock Treasury into a set of numbers. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, we'll see what the numbers are this time. But last time, the numbers released in the pre-election economic and fiscal outlook by Treasury and Finance were essentially the same as those released by Wayne Swan just a few weeks before that.
Well,
so,
let me just ask you, will a coalition return the budget to surplus by 2016-17?
Well, under the coalition, the budget position will always be in better shape than it would be under Labor because we'll spend less and
so
because...
the answer is yes then, is it?
Well, the answer is yes if the budget position, if the starting position is an honest reflection of what is in the papers, then that would be yes, for sure. But I mean, it depends on the starting position. And I've got to say, we don't trust Labor's numbers. And given their past track record, we've got all reason to be very sceptical of the numbers that the Labor Party publishes in their budget papers. Because from every budget to every update, the position has massively deteriorated to the point where they've delivered $250 billion worth of accumulated deficits.
Can I ask you about the mining tax? Now, you've been at the vanguard of coalition criticism of the mining tax, including the version that Julia Gillard legislated. Are you committed to not only removing it, but if you're unable to remove it because of being blocked in the Senate, going to a double dissolution election, even if on that issue alone? And I'm working on the assumption that, let's say, for example, that Labor rolls over on the issue of the carbon price in the Senate, but they don't do so on the mining tax. Will you commit to absolutely even go to a double dissolution on that issue alone?
Well, we're committed to scrapping the mining tax because that is part of our. This is part of our plan for more jobs. It's part of our plan.
What do you do if you can't get it through the Senate, though? 1 million
new jobs within 5 years. Well, I mean, you're asking me hypotheticals. I mean, let me ask you the question this time. The mining tax in 2012-13, according to the budget papers, raised 95% less than what was originally forecast by Wayne Swan when they signed the deal. Now we found out last week that even the 5% that they have collected has been started to be refunded by the government to the company. So by the looks of it, they haven't actually raised a dollar or in 2012-13. Now, the mining tax is a very complex, distorting, inefficient tax which is costly to administer, costly to comply with, which hasn't raised any meaningful revenue. Why would you keep a tax that ties up an important industry for Australia in massive red tape, makes it harder for us to grow our economy more strongly when it doesn't raise any meaningful revenue? I can't believe that after the election, the Labor Party would be so stupid as to not to support our plan to scrap such a stupid, ridiculous tax.
One of the coalition's key commitments is to have this commission of audit into national government spending and agencies. After you get the results of that report, after you get the results of that audit, will you take decisions based on that document, or will you delay such decisions and seek a mandate on them at the next election?
Well, I mean, the reason you have an audit is so that you obviously make decisions in relation to some of the recommendations that come out of it. I mean, the purpose of the Commission of Audit... Sorry?
So you would act on the recommendations immediately?
Well, I mean, I think with any report, I mean, obviously I can't give you a blanket statement about what we would do with all of the recommendations at this point in time. I mean, you've got to go through proper process, something that Kevin Rudd and the Labor Party don't really understand.
I'm asking for general intent. I'm asking for a statement about general intent.
Well, the general intent is to have a commission of audit so that, obviously, this is part of our plan to make sure that taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely, that we've got the most efficient operations in government possible, and of course it is part of our commitment to make sure that we spend less. And so, I mean, of course, like the whole objective of having a review like this is so that when the recommendations come in, you'll consider them, and I mean, no doubt there'll be some things that we'll agree with, and there'll be some things that we won't agree with. There'll be some things that'll be able to be done quite...
I mean, you will seek to act on them after you get the report. That's what you're telling us.
Well, that's the whole point.
Sure.
Can I ask you about one thing that the coalition's been very clear on, despite attempts by the Labor Party to launch a scare campaign in this territory, and that's the GST. Now, Tony Abbott and others, yourself included, couldn't have been more clear that there will be no GST in the first term of an Abbott government. But you are not going to rule out a GST never ever style, are you, beyond the first term? You'll seek a mandate if you decide to try to do anything in relation to the GST after an entire period of government. That's fair, isn't it?
Peter, if people vote us into government on September 7, there will be no change to the GST.
But that's for this term. You're not going to go and rule it out forever and a day. You would always seek a mandate were you to make any decisions beyond this term.
Look, I mean, Kevin Rudd is getting desperate, so he's desperately trying to get a scare campaign off the ground. I mean, we've been very clear there will be no change to the GST if we're elected to government on September 7. I mean, Kevin Rudd might want to run the 2016 and the 2019 and the 2022 election campaign. We're focused on this election campaign. We're focused on our plans for a stronger economy, for more jobs, for helping people with their cost of living pressures, for stopping the votes. I mean, Kevin Rudd he can run whatever scare campaign he wants, but our position is very clear. He knows it. I mean, these are just Labor lies.
As a matter of general tax reform principle, does the coalition favour the idea of a shift in the tax burden from direct taxation, from personal income taxation, towards indirect taxation?
Well, as a matter of general tax reform principle, we favour lower, simpler taxes so we can grow our economy more strongly and create more jobs. I mean, that's why we're scrapping the carbon tax and the mining tax over this next term of government. That's why we're cutting the company tax. That's why we're funding income tax cuts and pension increases without a carbon tax. That is all part of our plan for a stronger economy and for more jobs.
Senator Matthias Cormann, we appreciate your company on this episode of Australian Agenda. Hopefully see you again before the campaign's out. Thanks very much.
Hope so.